It's just a game, right? A simple piece of wood printed with letters, numbers, and a few simple words. Yes, no, goodbye. It comes with a plastic planchette, a pointer that seems to glide effortlessly under your fingertips. People buy them at toy stores. They bring them out at sleepovers, late at night when the house is quiet. The world outside feels distant. They gather around, nervous laughter, genuine curiosity filling the air. What starts as a bit of fun can quickly become something else entirely, something much darker. The story begins with two teenage sisters, Chloe and Mia, during a boring summer vacation. They were stuck at their grandmother's old house, antiques, creaky floorboards. On a rainy afternoon, while exploring the attic, they found a dusty, forgotten box. Inside was an old Ouija board from the 1960s. They brought it down to their shared bedroom. They waited until their grandmother was asleep. They lit a few candles for atmosphere. They placed their fingers lightly on the planchette, their nervous giggles echoing in the quiet room. They started with simple questions. Is anyone here? The planchette slowly, deliberately, moved to yes. What is your name? The pointer spelled out Lilith. They asked Lilith how she died. This account comes from a group of college friends, Mark, Sarah, Ben, Jessica, who decided to use a Ouija board during a party. For the first half hour, the planchette barely moved. They were about to give up, convinced it was all a hoax. Then, just as Mark was about to call it a night, the planchette shot across the board with a speed that startled them all. It began to move in a figure-8 pattern again and again, a classic sign that paranormal investigators warn about. When they asked who they were speaking with, the planchette spelled out Zozo. None of them had heard the name before. They asked another question, and again it spelled Zozo. The entity refused to answer anything else, only repeating its name or moving in that same frantic figure-8 motion. The air in the room grew heavy and cold. Sarah, feeling increasingly uneasy, lifted her hands from the planchette and said she wanted to stop. The moment she did, the pointer spelled out her name, Sarah, and then moved to goodbye. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen, but they were all centered around Sarah. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a man named David bought a new house for his family. It was their dream home, spacious and bright. A few weeks after moving in, clearing out old boxes in the garage, he discovered a Ouija board, old and well-used. That weekend, he and his wife, Emily, invited their neighbors over for dinner. Tom, Karen. Let's try it for a laugh. They gathered around the coffee table, skepticism mixed with a hint of nervous excitement. Their questions were met with silence at first. They were about to pack it away when the planchette began to move. It spelled out a name, Seth. They asked who he was. He claimed to be a spirit tied to the house. The following week, strange occurrences began. The TV would turn on by itself to static, faint whispering from empty rooms, toys turning on at night. Emily found Lily sitting up, talking to an empty corner. When asked who she was talking to, Lily smiled and said, "My new friend Seth." The final terrifying event, Emily caught a reflection in the blank TV. For 1 second, she saw a man's face behind her, a wide, unnatural grin. She screamed and turned. No one there. They had invited Seth in. He made himself at home. They packed and moved, leaving the Ouija board behind for the next family to find. Angela was a high school student grieving the recent sudden loss of her boyfriend Michael. Consumed by sorrow, desperate to speak with him one last time, she bought a Ouija board. Her best friend Jessica warned her against it, telling her it was dangerous and that she was in a vulnerable state. One night, alone in her bedroom, she lit candles and placed Michael's photograph next to the board. With tears streaming down her face, she placed her fingers on the planchette and begged for him to come through. To her immense relief, the planchette moved to yes. It spelled out loving messages, new details only Michael would know, private jokes, memories of their first date. It told her he was watching over her. For weeks, this became Angela's nightly ritual. The board was her only comfort. The entity, claiming to be Michael, made her a promise. It would never leave her side. Jessica grew increasingly worried. Angela was becoming isolated, refusing to see friends or leave her room. When Jessica entered, Angela was alone, yelling at the Ouija board. The planchette was spelling out angry, jealous messages. She felt a constant, oppressive presence. She would feel cold hands on her shoulders and hear a man's voice whispering her name. It took months of intervention from her family and a spiritual medium to perform a cord-cutting ritual to sever the toxic energetic tie she had created. In the winter of 1982, 3 roommates, Paul, Darren, and Nick, were snowed in for the weekend. Bored and looking for entertainment, they remembered an old Ouija board in Paul's closet. They were all in their early 20s, filled with a sense of invincibility and skepticism. Disappointed, they decided to up the stakes and move the session to the one place in the house that genuinely creeped them out: the small, dark attic. The attic was cold and dusty, accessible only by a rickety pull-down ladder. They set the board up on an old wooden trunk and began again. This time, the response was immediate and powerful. The planchette flew across the board, spelling out that it was a spirit that had been trapped in the attic for over a century. A cold wind seemed to whip through the enclosed space, extinguishing their only candle and plunging them into total darkness. Then they heard it. A loud, angry bang on the attic door from the other side. Scrambling in the dark, they fumbled for their flashlight. The trap door, which they had left wide open, was now firmly shut. For what felt like hours, they were prisoners in the attic, listening to disembodied footsteps and scratching on the other side of the door. Finally, as the first light of dawn broke through the small window, the footsteps stopped. They tried the door again, and it swung open easily. This story is one of the most famous and chilling accounts associated with the Ouija board, and it served as the inspiration for the novel and film, The Exorcist. It revolves around a teenage boy in the late 1940s, known by the pseudonym Roland Doe. Roland was very close to his aunt, a spiritualist who introduced him to the Ouija board. When she passed away, a grief-stricken Roland used the board in an attempt to contact her. Soon after he began these sessions, strange and terrifying phenomena started to plague his family's home: dripping water, scratching sounds, furniture sliding on its own. The entity revealed its name was not that of his aunt. Through the board, it introduced itself as Captain Howdy. Soon after, Roland's personality began to change. He became sullen and aggressive. Red scratches and welts appeared on his skin in patterns that looked like words. One night, his bed began to shake and levitate with him in it. The family reached out to their church. With the help of several priests, Roland was moved to St. Louis for a formal exorcism. The ritual was a harrowing ordeal that lasted for weeks. Priests documented Roland speaking in guttural voices and foreign languages he had never learned. Objects flew around the room. Words like evil and hell mysteriously appeared on his body in bloody scratches. After dozens of attempts, the exorcism was declared a success. The family destroyed the Ouija board, and Roland went on to live a normal life. His story remains a powerful warning about who or what might be waiting on the other side of the board. After hearing these accounts, we are left with more questions than answers. What exactly is the Ouija board? Is it truly a portal to the spirit realm, allowing us to communicate with those who have passed on? Or is it something far more dangerous, a tool that can be hijacked by malevolent entities with deceptive intentions? We see patterns in these stories: the innocent beginning, the shift from friendly to menacing, the physical manifestations that bring the terror into our reality. The psychological component cannot be ignored. Some argue the Ouija board works on the ideomotor effect, where our subconscious minds guide our hands to spell out answers we expect or secretly fear. But this explanation falls short when faced with physical phenomena witnessed by multiple people: levitating objects, disembodied voices, doors locking on their own. In so many of these cases, the activity doesn't just stay with the board. It follows participants, latching onto a specific person, as if the session creates an energetic cord, a connection that allows the entity to cross over from its realm into ours, using the person as an anchor. This is the greatest danger of the Ouija board: creating a bond with something you can't see and cannot break. Ultimately, we may never have a definitive answer. The world of the paranormal is, by its very nature, a realm of mystery. What we do have are the experiences, the countless stories passed down through generations, all echoing the same caution: fear, trauma, a haunting that can last a lifetime. The stories are told, the warnings have been given. From the shadow in the corner to the terrifying ordeal of Roland Doe, the message is chillingly consistent. The Ouija board is not a toy. It is a device of communication, an invitation sent out into the vast unseen world that exists parallel to our own. Think of it this way: the spirit world is like a vast, dark ocean. The Ouija board is like fishing with a net that has giant holes in it. You might catch what you're looking for, but you are far more likely to pull in a predator that was drawn by the disturbance. Entities like Zozo are known to patrol these spiritual pathways, seeking out the curious and the vulnerable. They prey on grief, they thrive on fear, and once they have a hold, they are notoriously difficult to get rid of. The brief thrill of a moving planchette is not worth the potential for a long-term haunting or a traumatic spiritual attachment. Families have been torn apart. Individuals have been left with deep psychological and spiritual scars. The common thread is always regret. We thought it was just a game. We didn't believe it was real. If only we could go back and never touch it. The problem is, you can't go back. Once the door is opened and the invitation is accepted, closing it is never as simple as putting the board back in the box.